Good morning. Thanks for joining me today. Today we're talking about supporting speech sounds at home, so hopefully this is where you want to be right now. I'm just going to switch to presenting mode so you can see my screen, and then we will get started. Just a moment. Okay, there we go. So yeah, like I said, we're talking all about supporting speech sounds today. I'll just give you a little bit of an overview of the agenda so you can prepare your brain about some of the topics we'll be talking about today. So first, I'll just do a little bit of an introduction. We'll talk very briefly about some speech sounds and definitions. We won't spend too much time on that. I will cover some tips for working on speech, as well as some frequently asked questions. So if you are practicing already, you might be wondering some of these things, or if you haven't started practice yet, these are some common things that come up. So we'll go over that. We'll also talk about how to include speech in daily routines. So we'll talk about what some of those routines are and give some examples of things that you can work on. We'll spend quite a bit of time talking about a whole bunch of different speech activities. So you won't have to do all of them with your child. You can kind of get an idea of some of the possibilities and then pick and choose what you think would work for them. We'll end with some final thoughts, a bit of a summary, and then have some time for questions as well. All right. So for the introduction part, who are we? My name's Desiree Brown. So I'm a SLP with the division. I've been with the division for 10-ish years with a couple years elsewhere before that. For me, working for Sturgeon has really been a lot like coming home. I grew up in the area. I live in the area now. So it's really a pleasure for me to be able to work in and around the area that I live in. So with that, there are a number of schools. So I go to some of them, and then there's 3 other SLPs that also visit pre-K. So the schools I'm at this year are Legal, Camilla, and Oker Park. So if your child goes to a different school, I'm still more than happy to answer questions about practice and kind of guide you as best I can. But I might just need a little bit more background for those children because I haven't met them yet. So but yeah, I was going to do a bit of a poll. Maybe Shay can help just to see who's here and what school your child goes to. All right. I'm going to move on to some quick definitions. So when we're talking about speech, we're talking about the sounds that we say and how they sound. So that's different from language, which is the words that we use and understand. So today, our focus for this talk is just about those speech sounds. So a word that you might hear sometimes is intelligibility, and that just means like how much a listener can understand of someone's speech. So kind of talking about that speech clarity. When we think of sounds, there is a progression of development. So sometimes I'll get asked questions for pre-Ks, and they're like, oh, they can't say their TH sound. And as you see in the chart, that's one of the later sounds, so we don't really worry about that until they're like 6-ish. But this is just kind of a guideline. When the SLPs first did the assessments with your child, and when we're thinking of goals to do their IPPs on, this is kind of like a rough guideline that we might use to help and choose some of those goals. So if your child is 3, you can see some of the 3-year-old sounds might be like P and B and T, K, G, F, whereas when they get 4, there's some higher expectations there. So then we're starting to listen for that L, the SH, CH, and then like I mentioned, there's some sounds that we're not quite worried about yet in pre-K, like the R and the TH tend to happen later. So just to give you a rough idea. Like you can see here, there's a whole bunch of tips for working on sounds. feel free to ask questions if you have any, but these are just some of the highlights. So the first one is to have their hearing tested, which most of them we do in the program, at least do a screen to make sure that that's not a concern, so we can rule that out, to make sure that they're able to hear all those different sounds accurately. Because as you can imagine, if they can't hear all those different sounds, it can be hard to imitate them and copy them and say them. So if your child hasn't had their hearing tested, or if they had a hearing screen but they didn't pass it, you might want to look into getting an audiology assessment from Alberta Health Services, and I can provide that information later on. One of the main strategies is modeling. So we want you to model that clear speech that they might be able to imitate. When you're modeling, it's important as much as you can to be kind of face-to-face with them down at their level, so that they can see how all the different parts are moving. They can see your lips and your teeth and how that all looks. Sometimes it's even helpful to practice in a mirror so they can see not only your face, but also their face and how it might look the same or maybe different, and how they can change that to make it look more like the sound that you're making. Another suggestion is to slow down and to really emphasize and exaggerate those sounds. Sometimes they'll even say to repeat them like up to 3 times. So if your child says, I like that, you could say, oh, you like that. I like that too. And you're just dragging it out a little bit and really emphasizing it. You can also name the sounds. Kind of when you're learning a sound, it can help to give it a different name. If you call it something like the letter sound, like the S, they're kind of already used to saying it a certain way. So sometimes giving it a different sound can help them learn that new different way that you're trying to teach them. So these are just some examples. If you do know what your SLP was using with your child, stick with that. But these are some that I like to use. So for example, the S we call the snake sound. The G might be the gulping sound. The K, the coughing sound. The F, the bunny teeth. V could be like the vacuum. Sh, the quiet sound. L could be like the singing sound. La, la, la. And I know you can't see me right now because I'm just have the PowerPoint, but as I was doing all of those, I was also doing a gesture with them. So a gesture cue can also be just a nice little reminder for your child on how to say those sounds. So for example, for the coughing sound, you can point to the back of your throat because that's where we say the sound. Or for the bunny teeth sound, I'll often point to my lip and just to draw their attention to how my teeth are on my lip for that sound. The quiet sound might be a gesture like holding a finger in front of your lips as if you're telling someone shh to be quiet. So those are just some ideas that can be kind of get you going with practice with those sounds. Other ways to kind of work on sounds could be pointing out the sounds in the environment. So maybe while you're driving, trying to look for all the words or the signs that you say that have that sound, or if you're reading a book, looking for those letters that make those sounds while you're reading. And of course, kids are very motivated by sounds that are meaningful to them. So if you want like doing the sounds in their name can be a good place to start because they're excited about those sounds and letters already. Another idea is to be silly. So you can make mistakes and see if they can kind of be the teacher and help catch and point them out. Sometimes you can sing songs, but replace the words with a speech sound. That's a great way to get lots of practice. Making silly sounds, doing silly movements that kind of go with those sounds. And then the last one is giving lots and lots of praise. So everyone learns from positive reinforcement, and we all like to know when we're doing a good job. So when your child is doing a good job and using their clear speech sounds, make sure you let them know because that can encourage them to say it even more often. So for example, if you hear them using their clear S sound, oh, wow, great snake sound. I hear your snake sound. It was so clear. Or, wow, you said that snake sound and you kept your tongue behind your teeth. Nice work. So trying to be a little bit more specific to what they said and what was good about it, as opposed to just saying like a general like good job. It helps to give them those little cues of like, wow, I really understood you when you said that. Or wow, I liked how you lifted your tongue up behind your teeth when you said your singing sound. So things like that can be helpful.
Sorry to interrupt you, Des.
Yeah.
We're still seeing the first slide.
Oh, goodness. I don't know.
If you want, I could present it from my end and you can just tell me when to click.
Let's do that. Sure. If you want to actually just go to that one, I think it's slide 5, and then they can just see the quick development ones, and then you can click from there.
It's not working on your end either, hey?
No, it's frozen to the main, like it doesn't, yeah, it's frozen on that main page.
One sec.
Awesome. I can see you're on that development page. Is there a way to make it bigger, or is it just on my end for?
Yeah, there is. Just give me 1 second. I'm working on it. You can keep going and I'll be playing with it in the background.
Okay. All right. So I might go, just going to use my screen so I can see that the next part that we're going to talk about is frequently asked questions. So again, your child you might not be practicing yet, and that's okay. If you are already practicing, you might be wondering some of these already, or as you practice, these are some things that might come up. So the first one is, my child can use speech sounds when we practice, but they aren't using their sound any other time. So why not? So first, there's a lot going on with all those different things: the lips, the tongue, the teeth, the jaw, turning your voice on or off, having the airflow the right way. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's hard to get all those things right and be thinking about them all the time. So it's hard work. Also, when we practice, there's a bit of a hierarchy. So I have here a picture of a pyramid. So at the very base of the pyramid, we're just that foundation for everything is just being aware of the sound. So can they hear the sound? Can they tell the difference between when the sound is accurate and when the sound is inaccurate? So just that, knowing yes or no, if it's clear or not, is the base. The next step is being able to say the sound on its own. So for example, being able to say s by itself. From there, we would move into syllables. So if we were working on the S sound, for example, after saying S, we might work into like see or so, then into words like soup, and then longer words like maybe sandwich, then working into phrases like I see something, and then into sentences, so adding a few more words to it. And then conversation is that very last kind of top of the pyramid step. So there's all these little steps towards conversation. So if your child is just working on at the word level, there's still a few steps before using it consistently in conversation. And that doesn't mean they're not making progress or they're not doing good with their sound. It just means that there's a few more steps to go. There's also a difference between copying. So when you say it and then they say it, that's a bit easier than when they say it on their own. So within each of those steps on the pyramid, there's also that like copying or saying it on their own, or giving them some cues and reminders versus no cues or reminders. So the most difficult thing is for them to be able to self-monitor and do those corrections on their own. Let's see. Oh, yay. Awesome. Thank you, Shay. We can go to the next one, I think. Awesome. The next one is sometimes we say, oh, yeah, that's great that they can practice with you, but they never want to practice with me at home, or like they just don't want to sit and practice. What can I do? So the first thing would be to try and enjoy and incorporate their interests as much as possible. I'll go over a whole bunch of different activities. And again, you can pick and choose which ones you think would work best for your child, but trying to do things that interest them. So if they like active things, do something active together. If they like doing crafts, maybe you think of a way to do it in a craft. So there's lots of different ways to do it, just to try and make it something that they would enjoy or that they're interested in. You also kind of have to balance with what works well with your family, and there's different things that work better for different families. Some families like having a structure and routine of maybe these 10 minutes of the day are our speech, careful talking time. And it's, that 10 minutes maybe after dinner or something like that, and building it in that way. Whereas other families might find it works better to do like a couple minutes at a time, kind of throughout the day. Or so again, it takes a little bit of experimenting and knowing what works best for not only your preferences, but also your child's preferences. Sometimes those quick, fun activities can be really good and really work well for your child. Another thing you can try is to build it into your daily routine. So maybe you don't feel like you have time for that 10 minutes of like separate speech practice, but maybe you can build it into something you're already doing. So maybe you can build it into bath time, for example, or maybe you can incorporate it into as part of your bedtime routine. So we'll talk about some of those ideas a little bit more, but that's another idea, is making it in those routines that you're already doing. And another big one that I kind of said already is just that modeling. So even if you're not practicing or asking your child to practice, you can still model and emphasize any of their missing sounds. They don't always have to copy you, and it can be kind of frustrating if you're constantly pausing what they're saying and getting them to copy you. So instead of like if they said, oh, I like that, like that example I gave earlier, again, you can model in your mind like, oh, you like that. I like that too. You can use the gesture or hand cue like I did, but even if you just kind of do that emphasis of making it a little louder, a little longer, and repeating it a few times to help them make them more aware, that can go a long way. That pyramid that we showed, that to building that awareness and foundation for them. And again, like I mentioned before, praise, praise, praise. So whenever you can, if they are using their clear sounds, really do draw attention to that and celebrate that and let them know what they're doing right. Okay, we can go to the next. Next slide when you're ready, Shay. Oh, awesome, thank you. All right, so the next one is, what should I do if I don't understand what my child's saying and they're getting frustrated? So sometimes when kids have a lot of errors, or even there's certain words, like they might only be working on one sound, but it can be hard to understand certain words that they're saying if that one sound isn't clear. So some things that you can do are to repeat the parts that you did understand. So you can repeat back, I heard you say, and then kind of fill in the parts or the words that you can, and ask if they can maybe tell you more or tell you another way. Maybe they might use gestures to show you or point to something. So you can kind of ask them if they can show you or tell you another way. If you know that say you're offering snack time or something, maybe you can offer some of those most common snacks that they like, or some things that you think it could be. As well, you can try asking someone else. So sometimes siblings are a great little interpreters, and they seem to always know what their sibling is saying. So that's another strategy as well. Thanks. So then we're going to talk about some daily routines. So again, there's lots of different routines. You're going to kind of want to think about the routines that you do as a family, and ones that you think might work well for incorporating some speech sounds. So I'll go over them all individually with some more ideas, but just to kind of, again, get your brains ready and highlight some things. Some daily routines that you can think about doing this in might be like mealtime. We eat several times throughout the day, so you can pick one meal time, or you can try and do this at each of them, kind of whatever works for you. Maybe your child is involved with helping you do some chores around the house. Maybe they're helping doing laundry, so some kind of household tasks they can be working on their speech sounds. Lots of families are busy. They're going different places, extracurriculars, that kind of thing. So those car rides can be a really good time too to incorporate some practice. If having a bath is part of your child's daily routine, there's ways that you can practice their speech sounds during bath time. Now that the weather's getting warmer, you might be visiting the playground more often. So again, you can practice at the playground. It's great to do stories on a regular basis anyways, but if you are doing stories already, again, you can kind of amp it up a little bit, and they can be practicing their speech sounds while reading or listening to stories as well. And then you can think about your bedtime routine. Maybe there's some ways you can sneak in some speech practice right before they go to bed, so then their brains can solidify while they're sleeping. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so this first one is all around mealtime. So like I said, you can pick one mealtime, or you can do it throughout. And I forgot to mention in the tip section, this should have been bolded and flashing and all of that. But when you're picking words to work on, try to choose words that are meaningful and purposeful for your child. Try to relate them to the activity that you're doing, or try to make them, again, words that they would use frequently. So sometimes those powerful words might be like, mention their name can be motivating. So if their name has a speech sound that they're working on, maybe it's a sibling's name or a pet's name, or maybe if they're doing a certain sport, working on like maybe they're going to be playing soccer in the spring or something like that, and they're working on their S. So you can think of some words related to soccer. So whatever you're doing, try to make it meaningful and purposeful, so that just those words can be a bit more powerful in terms of their learning. So back to mealtime, you're going to choose a word for your child to practice. They can practice while setting the table, or they can practice while time to eat. So for example, if they were working on S blends, so that's where there's S and another consonant, maybe they're putting out spoons, and every time they set out a spoon at the table, they say spoon. Or before you give them like a handful of spoons to set out, maybe they have to say them however spoons you have. They have to say it that many times and then get all the spoons to set out at the table. Or maybe they're working on F and they're practicing fork, or they're counting how many they need. So maybe they need 4 cups or 5 of something. So again, practicing those words. They can also, like if they're working on their G, maybe they get to give certain items out. You can ask them for their L sound if they want a little or a lot of something. Maybe they want a little apple or a large apple, or maybe they get to get all of something. So again, depending on what their targets are, you can kind of incorporate some of those ideas into what you're doing. L blends, plate, we can practice saying please. Yeah, so again, these aren't like, it's not all the words, but it's some ideas to kind of get your brains going on some possibilities and get you thinking about what your child could do during a time like that. So that's mealtime. Next, we have laundry. So laundry is not my favorite time, but maybe it's something you could enjoy with your child, or something that, yeah, again, you can incorporate some sounds. So again, whenever you're practicing, you're going to start with thinking of some words that you could target. Maybe you're getting socks and you're throwing them into the basket, and their job is to say sock with their S and get it in there. Or maybe they're sorting them and finding two socks that are the same, and every time they find one or want to look for one, they say same. Or maybe they're saying see and seeing if they can see different socks. Maybe they're helping you to spy for S blends, to spy the match. Or maybe they're helping you to stack the folded clothes into a pile or something. Maybe, yeah, there's all these other ideas for, they could get them, they could look for them. Again, they could sort by like the little ones or the large ones. So yeah, some different ideas there for laundry. Car time can be a fun one. Lots of families, like I mentioned, are on the go a lot, and car time, you can use some of those traditional kind of car type games and just change them slightly to incorporate some of their speech sounds. A super easy one that you all probably know is I Spy. So if your child is working on S blends, they've got lots of practice there for saying I spy, and then every time they spy something, they could say spy. Again, depending on you and your child, they could also, you could set up a certain number of times to say it before a turn or something like that, just to get a bit more practice. Another way that you can change it, say they're working on a different sound, is maybe spying something that starts with that sound. So maybe their target is the letter, or is the sound. So you can say, I spy something that starts with, and then all the guesses could be, okay, car, can, different buildings that might have that sound or something like that. So yeah, those are some ideas. And then they can do lots of practice around that. Another game that can be fun to play is, I call it going camping, but it could be going on a vacation or going anywhere. You can kind of be creative and make it your own. But it's where you practice sharing silly things that you might bring on a camping trip. So for example, you would say like, I'm going camping and I'm bringing a fish. So if F was their target sound, everyone has to go around and say they're going camping and they're bringing a friend or a fork. So you're practicing all those different words that start with their sound. So that's when you play the game, kind of set it up as that, like, okay, we're going to play this game. We're going to choose something that starts with your sound. And we're only allowed to bring things that start with your sound. So if you bring something that starts with a different sound, or if you say a different word, you can't come camping. But if you say something that starts with your sound, then we can go camping. So yeah, kind of important for whatever activity you choose is just making those expectations kind of clear and going over them ahead of time. Another one kind of similar to I Spy might be going on a sound hunt. So let's see who can find the most things that start with our sound on their drive. Or if your child's like into like challenges, maybe you just have a speech challenge and you see how many times they can say their sound or their word before you get to a certain place. All right, another idea could be bath time. So again, if your child is having a bath every day, you can think about some words to incorporate during that time that target their sound. So I've got some examples here for us again. It's not a full list, but it's just some ideas again. So maybe you have, if they're working on S, you have some toys and you see if they stink. And every time you get a toy, you see if it will stink. Maybe you hide something under the bubbles and then they have to see it, or for S blends, like spy it. Maybe they have different toys, and they go down a slide every time you get out a new toy. It can go down the slide. You can talk about maybe they're washing different toys if they're working on that shh at the end of words. Or before they get a toy, you can ask them to show you, and then they can show the toy. Or they can find something under the bubbles for their F. They can see if it will float. Maybe you get some fish in the bath, or you pretend your hand is a fish that's swimming. So again, there's K, so there you can do your, maybe they have a duck, maybe you're putting things in a can, or they say if they can do something. Maybe you make up a silly game and they asked even just for you to do it again for that G. So again, lots of different ideas that you can use at bath time as well. In playground time, it can be another fun way to practice, especially if your child likes being really active. Yeah, it's great to get outside. Not all practice has to be done kind of sitting down. It can be wherever. So maybe for S-blends, maybe they want to go on a swing and they say swing a few times and then you give them a push. Or maybe if they're going to go down the slide, you kind of block the way to the slide and they say slide before going down. Maybe you make a scavenger hunt and they have to find all the pine cones or something that are hidden around. You can use words like leap or climb. Maybe they're jumping off of something. So again, you're just trying to incorporate some of these and to try and set up opportunities to do them kind of repetitively while you're there. Yeah, again, these are just a few ideas, but yeah. And then we've got story time. So you can choose books that are sound loaded. So those are ones where we have lots of sounds repeated throughout. So a good rule of thumb is if you're looking for a book that has a certain sound, to look for that in the title. So for example, if your child was working on the L sound, Llama Llama would be a good story, or a Little Blue Truck. If it's in the title, chances are it's repeated throughout. But you can also use other stories that might not have it in the title, but again, have like a repetitive word throughout. So an example might be, maybe you're working on S. You could do something like brown bear, what do you see? And every time there's that word see, your child could practice saying that word. Or maybe there's like I Spy books, so maybe they could say what they're gonna spy if they're working on that. Or if they're working on the F, they can practice finding those words in the I Spy books. And then there's some other titles there, like for F, Jack and the Beanstalk. There's that fee, fi, fo, fum, sheep in a Jeep. Again, just some ideas, but yeah, look for it in the title as a good starting place. Also, the internet can help you if you say a children's book that has the whatever sound it is. There's usually some suggestions that come up. So similar to stories, but slightly different, are things like nursery rhymes and songs. So again, lots of these are great that they have the sounds repeated throughout them, so they can be great and fun for practice. And once your child knows it, they can help join in a little bit more. Try to do it slowly. So it can be hard, can become kind of like a tongue twister if they're saying it too fast. And if it's a new sound that they're practicing, they might need that little bit of extra time to get everything working and moving together. So yeah, we want them to be accurate more than just being fast at it. So yeah, that accuracy part is what we're looking for, because we want them to have that correct practice. So some ideas for the cuss sound, you might be pat a cake, and they're working on saying that cake, getting both the sounds at the back. S, a sailor went to sea. If you know that one, it's lots of different C's. A sailor went to sea, to see what they could see. So again, you can see how that could be going fast, but you want to kind of slow it down so that they do have the time to practice correctly. So a sailor went to sea to see what they could T, so you're slowing it down so that they can be successful with it. S blends might be something like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or the Itsy Bitsy Spider. You could do F with like Old MacDonald had a farm. And again, so when it comes up to that word, you're kind of pausing and waiting and waiting for your child to fill in that word. And depending on their level, you might model it first and then they copy you, or if they're able to do it by themselves with just you kind of maybe giving a cue, like pointing to your lip for farm, then they can just fill it in. J might be, you could do something like Jack and Jill, SH, Bob, Black Sheep, L, Mary had a little lamb, 6 little monkeys, this little piggy, anything with little, 5 little ducks, lots of chance to practice. All right, bedtime. So this might be a time where maybe you're busy throughout the day, but maybe now's the time when you're able to do a story or a nursery rhyme or do a song that has their sound like we already talked about. So again, you're going to spend that time, say the target with them. Maybe you're doing it after they brush their teeth. You're looking in this mirror and saying a sound or a word that they want to practice. Or maybe you're just saying a certain word that they want to learn like 10 times before bed or something like that. So you can think of ways to incorporate it into, again, if you think of your routine and what you're already doing, think of how you can build it in. Okay, so now we're on to speech activities and games. So again, this is just a list of all the different ones that we'll go over, but I will go over each of them a little bit more. So it could be games or puzzles or crafts that have pieces. It could be a turn-taking game, could be a game with cards, like treasure hunt, bowling, go fish, memory. So I'll talk about those a bit more. If your child likes being active, maybe they're doing some throwing or some other kind of sports and movements. So for those games, it could be puzzles or crafts that have pieces. Again, you want to set up the expectation. So I usually like to take turns, so have them say their word and then they get a piece and get to do what they like with it. But depending on the game, sometimes or activity, sometimes it might work well to have all the pieces and then they say their word and then they get one at a time and then they get to build the puzzle or do the craft or whatever it is. So kind of thinking about what might work for your child and setting it up for them. And then, so some examples are there, like Kerplunk has lots of pieces, any kind of puzzle or craft. Maybe it's even like a snack, so they get a few goldfish at a time or a few raisins at a time, and then once they get them all, they can eat them, but just kind of building in that practice before. Turn-taking games can be a lot of fun. It doesn't have to be anything special. Like it can be any kind of game that you have at home. I know sometimes I'll bring my games that might have something that pops or does something and families are like, oh, I have to get the game, but you don't, it's all good. Whatever you have that your child enjoys works, whether it's Snakes and Ladders, Candyland's a popular early one, Sorry, Trouble, those kinds of things. But basically anytime before they take a turn, they have to say a word that has their sound in it. And again, just a reminder, you want to choose a word that's related to the game if you can, or that has meaning. So maybe if the game has a spinner or something, they say spin and then spin the spinner and get a turn. Or maybe if there's a dice and they're working on maybe you hide the dice and they tell you to show it and then you show the dice and they can take a turn and give it a roll. Or if it's Snakes and Ladders, they're moving to a space. So saying a space. So again, some different ideas. And then there's games with cards. So there are speech sound cards that you can print from online sources. If you type in like speech sounds cards for K, for example, there's some ideas that come up. I also did put, there's a website called mommyspeechtherapy.com that you can go to and print different cards from. And they have it like at the beginning of words, in the middle, as well as at the end. So you can kind of check in on their IPP, what they're working on, or just kind of print them and see how it goes. But there's a few different ways you could do a treasure hunt. So maybe you hide some sounds around the room, and then they have to go on a hunt to find them. And every time they find those speech sound cards that you've printed off, they say what they found. I know St. Patrick's Day is coming up, so maybe you, like some families hide coins or something like that, so maybe you put one of those speech sound cards with a coin, and then that can make it a little more fun. I'm also into not doing cards too, so there's an idea to do it without cards. You don't have to print anything, but maybe they go just on a hunt and see how many things they can find in the house that start with that sound. Or maybe you hide like some stuffies or something, and if they're working on S-plans, or hide something, and then they say their word each time they find it or before they go and look for them again. So even you can do words like look for their L or find for their F. So there's some different functional words that you can incorporate into that. Again, you can do that in bowling too. So sometimes you don't have to have the exact like bowling game. You can use stuffies in a ball to knock over. You can use empty water bottles. Kind of be creative with what you use for like the bowling pins, but it can be a fun way to practice. So if you are using the cards, you would kind of hide the cards underneath the bowling pins, and every time they knock those ones over, they look at the card and say what the picture was or what they found. You can also do that without cards. So again, choosing some functional words that are related to that activity. So maybe if they're working on L, they can say ball, or if they're going to get them all down, or if they're going to get a little bit or a lot of the pins. Maybe you're talking about, oh, this is so fun. Let's have some fun. And then, so they're saying fun every time before they have a turn, or getting them to fall. So again, there's lots of different ways. Maybe for S-plans, they can say stand every time they stand them back up. So yeah, so you can do them with cards, or you can just choose some functional words to use as well. Another game that you can use is Goldfish. So I'm sure we know how to play that. Every player gets 5 cards. We take turns and try to find matches. Whoever finds the most matches at the end is like the winner. So if your child is working on any of those sounds that are in Go Fish, that's a phrase that's repeated over and over. So if they're working on the G for go, or the F in fish, or even that sh at the end of fish, and that can be a fun game to practice. You can also print out those speech sound cards. So then they're asking, like, do you have a snake, for example? So they're practicing with the cards that you print. Just make sure you print 2 sets so that there's that match for them. And then, yeah, there's some other ideas for sounds they could work on. Similar to that is memory. So that's where you put the cards face down, and there's 2 of each card, and they flip them over one at a time and try find a match. So you want to make sure that you're not putting out too many, that it's not successful, but try to have a little bit out there so that it's still fun and a challenge for them. So having that balance. But yeah, every time they flip them over, if you're using those speech sound cards, then they're saying that word that they found, like again, they're flipping over snake and saying snake. They're flipping over spider and saying spider, and then keeping going to find those matches. Lots of families might have some memory cards already. And again, if you have a set of cards that are maybe like Frozen or something, or have some kind of theme, or early learning cards, you can think about a word that you could target. So maybe they're getting to choose, or they're finding a match of the cards. Again, the F for find, or L for look, show. So yeah, there's different words that you could use with what you have already. Easter is another holiday that's coming up, and half the fun of that is sometimes finding the eggs that are hidden around. So again, you can use that for speech sound practice if you have some extra empty eggs around. So again, you can use that with target words that are printed from those speech sounds, and every time they open an egg, there's a card that it has their speech sound that they say. Or you can choose some functional words like go, find, look. Maybe you hide the egg halves separately, and they have to find their match if they're working on that ch sound. So yeah, some different possibilities there as well. If your child is into being active and kind of throwing, these are some ideas you can do. You can kind of change it up. They can throw a ball. They can do throw stuffies, throwing things into a bucket, throwing things through a hoop, maybe throwing crumpled paper into a waste bin. But yeah, kind of whatever you think they might have fun with, choosing an activity like that. And again, setting it up so that before each turn, they're having to say a word. If you want to use the speech cards, sometimes it can be fun to like tape them to the wall. And every time they throw it, they try and aim for a certain one. Maybe you can have them ask beforehand which one they're aiming for. And if they hit one, then they say that word that they hit. Or you can choose some functional words to work on. So again, maybe they're trying to get it at a certain spot, or maybe you hold it and then they tell you to start, and then they can have the ball to start. For L, I like to, maybe you're playing catch and you see if they go from a little way away or from a long way away, or they're working on like the ball and just saying the O at the end. So yeah, some different ideas there for throwing. And then along the same lines, there's other games. So again, whatever your child enjoys doing. If they like playing soccer, you can integrate into soccer. If they like playing hockey, then you can integrate it into that as well. Basketball, all these different things. So there's lots of words that are meaningful and related to those. So maybe like shoot or score, for that at the end, kick. So every time before they do it, they can say that sound, or they can say it a bunch of times. Like maybe you have your fingers out and they say it 5 times and you count down your fingers 5 times, and then they get the ball and they can shoot the basketball or something like that. But yeah, different ways to do that. So again, now we're kind of just going to highlight, summarize. So whatever activity you choose to practice in, whether it be a daily routine, like we mentioned, bath time, meal times, those car rides, or an activity. So again, thinking about what your child likes and what they enjoy, whether it's a craft or like more active game like throwing or kicking, or maybe they like board games or card games. So thinking about what your child, what they enjoy, and trying to choose some targets that are related to that, and that would be meaningful and rewarding for them to learn. So yeah, practice can be really fun. It doesn't have to be a chore. It can be fun to work on. And the more fun your child has, probably the more they're going to want to practice. So trying to choose those things that are interesting and motivating for them. And yeah, having some fun too, hopefully, with them. So that's kind of the end for today. But if you do have questions, you can feel free to email me about practice. Again, if I don't work at your child's school, just give me some background and I can try my best to help guide you into the practice. If you do know your child's IPP or where it is, maybe take a look at that for some starting points to start on. But yeah, are there any questions today?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much for joining.
Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.